Chair, we're now live.
Thank you very much, and good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Plans Committee for Charnwood Borough Council. There are a number of things I would like to remind people of before we start with the items on the agenda. Please note the meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and for the recording to be made available on the Council's website following the meeting. Under the openness of local government bodies regulations, people may film or record this meeting, and this is outside our control. However, people wishing to film or record the meeting should do so in a way that does not disrupt the business of the meeting. Also, so that the meeting is not disturbed, could I ask everyone present to please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent and ensure that your environment is distraction free. And can I remind everybody that this is a public meeting, so please conduct yourselves in an appropriate way. Thank you very much. As this is a virtual meeting, it will run slightly differently. Members will need to introduce themselves and state their name and confirm that they can see and hear the proceedings. This is important for the purposes of recording attendance and transparency of the meeting. I will do this by undertaking an alphabetical roll call. Members will use the raise hand feature in the participant section of the Zoom software if they wish to speak, and will be allowed to do so in a queue system. Voting will be undertaken by a roll call of all present in alphabetical order. Each member will state their name and how they wish to vote, for, against, or abstain. Speakers will be called forward at the appropriate time by the chair, and the microphone will be unmuted by the co-host. Speakers have 5 minutes each, and they will be timed by the co-host. When you have 1 minute of time remaining, a bell will sound and the co-host will mute you at the end of your 5 minutes. If there are any technical problems with outside speakers presenting, then I will read out the speaker's statement, which has been sent in advance of the meeting. I'm now going to confirm those as present. Councillor Bentley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Camsell.
Chair, yes, I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Forrest. Councillor Forrest.
Madam Chair, I think the Councillor Forrest has left the meeting, where hopefully she can log back on very soon.
Okay, I'll come back to her. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Grimley, I can see and hear the meeting.
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Ranson.
Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. I can both hear and see the proceedings.
Councillor Tassell.
Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Tillotson.
Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear proceedings.
Councillor Ward.
Yes, Chair, I can both see and hear proceedings.
And I think I forgot poor Mr. Capleton. Councillor Capleton. I can't hear you, Councillor Capleton. Could you unmute yourself, please?
Right, I confirm that I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you.
And you can hear me.
Yes, thank you very much. Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd lost connection for a moment then, but I can confirm that I can both see and hear you. Can you confirm that you can both see and hear me, please?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right, I'll also verbally confirm the officers to attendance. Jacqueline Jackson, Group Leader Development Management, Lewis Marshall, Senior Planning Officer, Catherine Harrison, Legal Advisor to the committee, Matt Goodger, Information Development Officer and co-host for this meeting, Karen Widdowson, Democratic Services Manager and Clerk for the meeting, Rachel Wallace, Democratic Services Officer, taking the minutes for this meeting, and Sally Watson, Democratic Services Officer, sharing PowerPoint slides. And I think the clerk, Karen Widdowson, will confirm the speakers who are in the virtual public gallery waiting room.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, in the attendance list that we have at the moment Elizabeth Jones from Selby Parish Council in respect of items 1 and 2. And we also have, in respect of item number 3, Dr. Justine Sidebottom, Niall Alcock and Roger Brown from the Parish Council of Seagrave Parish Council. And we are awaiting Councillor Poland in respect of the last item as well. Thank you.
Now, the request for the Chairman of Seagrave Parish Council, Mr. Roger Brown, it was a rather late application and indicating he would like to talk. Do I have the committee's approval that we can allow this late application? It might be easier if you disagree, you'd raise your hand rather than all say. So I see no raised hand, so I'm presuming that you all agree that on this occasion we will let Mr. Brown, representing Seagrave Parish Council, address the meeting. Thank you. Do we have any apologies?
So, Madam Chair, we have no apologies for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. The committee is asked to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of October. I will now call out each committee member in alphabetical order to respond. Councillor Bentley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy with the minutes.
Councillor Camsell.
Quite happy as well.
Councillor Capleton. You're muted, Councillor.
Yes, I'm happy with the minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to receive the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Forrest.
I agree the minutes, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. I agree the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I agree the minutes also.
Thank you. Councillor Ranson.
Thank you, Chair. I agree the minutes also.
Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. I agree the minutes.
Councillor Tassell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree that the minutes are correct.
Councillor Tillotson.
Thank you, Chair. I agree the minutes also.
And Councillor Ward.
Yes, Chair, I agree.
Thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting have been confirmed as the correct record, and I will now sign them. Do we have any questions? No questions. Item 3, questions under committee procedure 12.8. No questions were submitted. And can the clerk confirm that there were no?
Yes, Madam Chair, I can confirm that no questions have been submitted for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Disclosures of pecuniary and personal interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? Karen?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'm thinking I'm in full council there. I can confirm that both councillors Fryer and Ranson have personal interests in item 1, which is application number P19-02182, which is regarding 7 King Street, Selby, and item number 2, which is application number P19-0313-2, also 7 King Street, Selby, as they are the ward councillors and as such will be speaking in their capacity on these items, and as such will not be taking part in the meeting discussion or voting thereon in. Thank you. I'd also like it recording for the purpose of the minutes that the committee members have received correspondence in respect of items 1 and 2, and that they will consider them in line with all the relevant information and submissions relating to the applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grimley, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to item number 3, it's a personal interest in that I'm a fan of the Leicester City Football Club, but I'm not a season ticket holder. I am here with a clear mind and for the vote.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any declarations of interest? Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. It's in respect of item 3 as well. With my other hat on, I actually tutor one of the senior academy staff at Leicester City Football Club in Italian privately. He doesn't know I'm on the planning committee and we haven't discussed this application, but I'd just like to declare that anyway.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have no further hands showing. So what I'll do now, we're moving on to the planning applications and the first ones. So Councillor Ranson and I will now leave the meeting and it will be chaired by Councillor Bentley. So I shall switch off video.
Right, thank you, Councillor Fryer. So item 1, P/190218/2, UCR Construction and Development Limited, 7 King Street, Selby, pages 7 to 47. At this point, I'd like to bring in Jacqueline Jackson, who has a statement to read to the elected members.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, can I draw all members' attention to the extras report? And this is regarding both items 1 and 2, so pages 7 to 62 of your agenda. There's been a number of additional representations received, both from residents, the parish council and the local MP, and these relate to concerns regarding the height of the boundary wall and lack of consultation regarding those late amendments, disagreement regarding the weight that has been given to the neighbourhood plan and the policies contained with it, and also objections regarding the development of the application and how it might prejudice the development of the wider site. We have also received a late correspondence today after the publication of the extras report from Selby Parish Council reiterating their concerns and also their concern about highway impact, and also saying that they support the revised recommendation for deferral to allow these issues to be properly assessed. So officers have considered the correspondence that's come in, and given that there's been several objections specifically regarding the late amendment and the fact that they wish to have time to comment on it, it is officers' strong recommendation that members don't determine those applications tonight and they defer those applications to allow for a further period of public consultation relating to the amendment of that front boundary wall. So that's a change to the recommendations for both items 1 and 2 to the publication of the recommendation in the report. With regards to the other comments received regarding the weighting of the neighbourhood plan and the prejudice and the other issues that I have referred to, these have been noted by officers and these will be included and fully assessed within the officer's report when it's brought back before members at a future plans committee, along with any comments that we receive as part of the further public consultation. So thank you, members.
If I may, Chair, proposed deferment as per officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Do we have a seconder for that proposal?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Tassell. I'm now going to put that to the vote then for deferment.
Chair, can I just step in? Thank you. Just to be clear, I spoke about items 1 and 2. Can I go back to Councillor Lowe and just ask him to confirm whether this proposition is for both items or whether he's taken it item at a time. Thank you.
For both items, if I may, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lowe. And Councillor Tassell, you agree also for items 1 and 2?
Yes, I do agree.
Thank you. I'm now going to call out everybody's names. If you just indicate whether you're for, against, or abstaining. So, Councillor Roy Camsell.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor John Capleton.
For, Chair.
Councillor Mark Charles.
For the deferment, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sandy Forrest.
For the deferment, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hilary Fryer. Sorry, Councillor Hilary Fryer isn't actually in the meeting, of course, so I apologise for that. Councillor Daniel Grimley.
Thank you, Chair, for the recommendation to defer.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Lowe.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline Ransom. No, she's not in the meeting either. Councillor John Savage.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Joan Tassell.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jenny Tillotson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm for the deferment.
And Councillor Emma Ward.
Thank you, Chair. For.
Thank you. And I'm also for. So I'll just, that's unanimous. I'll just ask for Catherine Harrison just to confirm the votes. Catherine?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, that's a unanimous vote in favour of the proposition to defer the two items 1 and 2, to another meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. So that item is now deferred. So I'm now passing back to Councillor Fryer, who will chair the rest of the meeting, and also call back in Pauline Ransom to join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We now move on to item 3, which is P20-0696/2 Leicester City Football Club, pages 62 to 94 in your agenda, but there's also quite a detailed 3 or 4 pages on the extras to discuss. And we now have the presentation by Mr. Lewis Marshall, please. We do have 4 speakers that will follow this, which is a Mr. Justin Sidebottom, Mr. Niall Alcock, and Mr. Roger Brown. I did have flash up on my screen that Councillor Poland has had difficulties, and he has sent in his speech in case or his presentation. So I am presuming that the clerk has seen that as well. Thank you. I'll now move on to Mr. The planning officer, please. Lewis Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. So for this item, members are considering a Section 73 application to vary a condition placed on a planning permission, which in this case required junction improvement works at the A46 Parkhill Lane junction to be complete prior to the development coming into use. The development in question is the Leicester City Football Club training facility at Parkhill Lane, Seagrave. As the report sets out, the condition is to be varied to allow the use to commence at a reduced capacity with interim travel measures in place for a period of 3 months, at which time the junction improvement works will have to be completed. Before I get into the presentation, I would like to bring members' attention to the update sheet, of which there are a number of recommendations to revise the wording of the conditions within the report. Since the publication of the report agenda pack, a number of outstanding conditions have since been discharged, and therefore these conditions are recommended for modification to include reference to the most up-to-date and approved details. The applicant has also submitted a revised version of the interim travel measures document, which provides more clarity on how delivery vehicles will enter and leave the site. And condition 6 has been, it is recommended that condition 6 be revised to cite the most up-to-date version of this document, which is dated the 1st of December 2020. Next slide, please. So members will be aware of the site's location, but for completeness, the maps on the slide show where the site is in relation to Seagrave to the northwest, Sowerby to the southwest, and Thrustington to the east beyond the A46, which runs parallel to the site's eastern boundary. Next slide, please. So to remind members of the approved development, this slide shows the overall master plan of the site, which includes 12 full-size football pitches, 6 part-sized grass pitches, various smaller technical training areas, a sports hall, an indoor pitch building, the first team and academy training centre, a sports turf academy, various ancillary buildings, 421 parking spaces and a covered show pitch and stand with 499 spectator seats. It's worth noting that there are no physical changes to the approved development as part of this application. The application seeks only to vary the wording of condition 6 to allow occupation of the facility prior to the completion of the junction improvement works at the A46. However, the use of the show pitch and the 499 seat spectator stand would not commence until the junction improvement works had been completed, reducing the number of trips on the network that would otherwise be generated by the use. Next slide, please. So in terms of those junction improvement works required by condition 6 of the original planning permission, the works approved by this plan are currently required to be completed prior to the use commencing. The junction improvement works include widening of the central reservation and the creation of a staggered junction. The applicant has been in negotiations with Highways England in seeking technical approval of the detailed design of the scheme, and the work is due to take place between January and March 2021. Highways England has confirmed that technical approval has been granted, subject to a number of minor caveats. It is the central reservation of this junction which is to be avoided by employees of the facility during the 3-month interim period until the junction improvement works are complete. At the request of Highways England, the applicant has submitted a delivery programme to support their application, which demonstrates that the junction improvement works are on course to be delivered within 3 months of the permission being granted, should members be minded to go with officer's recommendation. Next slide, please. So in addition to the timely delivery of the junction improvement works, Highways England have requested that the applicant provide diversion signage at the junction to deter vehicle users associated with the facility from using the central reservation throughout the interim period and until the improvement works are completed. This plan shows that when vehicles are approaching from the north or east, they will be directed to travel south along the A46 and use the roundabout at the A46 A607 junction and travel back north via the A46 and then leave the slip road to access the facility via Park Hill Lane. Next slide, please. Similarly, when vehicles are leaving the facility to travel southbound via the A46, they will be diverted to turn left at the A46 junction and not to turn right using the central reservation, and travel north along the A46 and then leave at the 6 Hill junction to then rejoin the A46 southbound. It's important that members note that not all staff and players associated with the facility will use the A46 when travelling to and from the site. It was accepted in the determination of the original application around 40% of all trips generated would be from and to the west via Seagrave. It is not proposed as part of the application to require all vehicle users of the facility to access or leave the site by the A46, nor would it be reasonable or necessary in planning terms to require this. The diversions are in place or would be in place solely for users that would ordinarily travel via the A46 from the north, south or east. Next slide, please. So in addition to the measures already outlined, the applicant has agreed to undertake a series of measures to limit use of the facility, to reduce the number of trips and to ensure compliance with the diversion routes in order to prevent use of the central reservation during the interim period and until the junction improvement works are complete. So the show pitch and the 499 seats spectator stand will not be used. Employees and visitors will be instructed to follow the diversion routes in place, which will be reinforced by extensive measures as set out on page 65 of the report. In brief summary, these measures include staff consultations and briefings, staff and player inductions. Signed records will be obtained from staff being advised of and agreeing to follow the diversion routes. Communications and reminders through staff circulars and TV screens at the facility, and distribution of leaflets and reminders from security staff at the access gate. Delivery vehicles for catering, waste and fuel will be instructed to follow the diversions and enter and leave the site only during off-peak hours. The applicant has confirmed in the latest version of the interim travel measures document that this will be secured as part of the contract arrangements with these third parties. Concerns have been raised as to the enforceability of the measures, but officers are of the view that the measures to be implemented on the site can be enforced and will deter site users from using the central reservation during the interim 3-month period. The applicant has agreed to monitor compliance at the junction at least once per week with CCTV, and any non-compliant vehicles or vehicle users using the central reservation can be traced back to the facility via their ANPR system, which keeps a record of all vehicles that enter and leave the site. Finally, the Local Planning Authority and Highways England will periodically request a monitoring report to be submitted for inspection within 24 hours of request to ensure the measures are being implemented effectively. Should any monitoring report give rise to any concerns, the Local Planning Authority would need to investigate if the measures had been adequately implemented before any decision was made to take enforcement action. Next slide, please. So in terms of key considerations for members, the foremost consideration in the determination of this application is highway safety and the variation of condition 6 as set out in the update report. Officers in consultation with Highways England consider that the interim travel measures can be enforced on the site and will be effective in preventing staff and employees from using the A46 central reservation during the interim period in order to adequately mitigate any risks associated with the use of the facility. Highways England, as the statutory consultee, which required the junction improvements to be a condition of the development, does not raise an objection to the application and has deemed it to be safe to commence the use at reduced capacity and with the interim travel measures in place. Furthermore, the applicant and Highways England have confirmed that the junction improvement works are scheduled to take place between January and March 2021, providing confidence that the scheme will be delivered within the 3-month period as required by the condition. In terms of conditions to be reimposed, the Section 73 application would result in the issuing of a new permission, with all previous conditions to be reapplied or varied as appropriate. Since the publication of the committee report, a number of conditions have been discharged, and it is therefore recommended that those conditions be reworded to reflect the most up-to-date approved details. The application is therefore recommended for approval as set out on page 81 of the report, with conditions amended as set out in the update report. Thank you, Chair.
You're muted. You're muted.
Hello. Thank you very much. And we now have 4 speakers. We have Dr. Justin Sidebottom, first of all, and then the agent, Mr. Niall Alcock, and Mr. Roger Brown, the chairman of Seagrave Parish Council, number 3, and Councillor James Poland, the ward councillor. We did receive a message that Councillor Poland was having difficulty, and he has emailed his presentation through to us, his speech. So hopefully Karen or someone has picked that up. So I'll call on Dr. Justin Sidebottom. Just to remind you, you have 5 minutes, and after 4 minutes, it will be indicated to you that you only have 1 minute left. If you're still talking after 5 minutes, I'm afraid you will be muted by the officers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Your 5 minutes starts now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and the Plans Committee members. My name is Justine Sidebottom, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of the residents of Seagrave Village. Councillors here tonight who are also present at the Plans Committee meeting on the 11th of October 2018 will remember that the subject which generated the most concern, discussion and debate was that of road and traffic safety concerned with this proposal. We challenged the committee to reconsider the recommendation advised by the planning officer to accept the proposed amendment of condition 6. We would argue that opening the facility, even at a partial capacity, before the safety works to the A46 junction are complete, is going to make the A46 junction and road network in the villages of Seagrave and Sowerby more dangerous for local residents than it currently is, and more dangerous than it is going to be once the junction improvements are finished. The reasons for this are as follows. Firstly, Leicestershire Police do not support this amendment and have concerns about the local road network as well as the A46. In email correspondence from a senior traffic management officer dated the 20th of the 5th, 20, they state, and I quote, "In my view, there remains a realistic chance that many drivers would choose to use the existing more direct routes, thus avoiding the more circuitous ones that have been suggested. Being mindful of the collision rate at this site, the prospect of any additional such movements raises road safety concerns. Having regard to my aforementioned comments, Leicestershire Police does not support this amendment," unquote. One of these more direct routes is to access the A46 southbound carriageway by turning left on leaving the facility and driving through the villages of Seagrave and Sowerby. There has been no risk assessment for the road safety impact of this amendment on the local road network through these villages. We ask the committee to request this risk assessment before making their decision. Secondly, additional information in the form of a risk assessment for the impact on the A46 has been submitted since the above statement from the police. This has satisfied concerns raised by Highways England. However, Leicestershire Police have not been reconsulted. We ask the committee to ensure that the Leicestershire Police are reconsulted once a full set of data containing risk assessments, both for the A46 carriageway and the local road network through Seagrave and Sowerby, are available. If it is the case that the committee choose to be selective about which experts they take advice from and proceed without the support of Leicestershire Police, it is worth emphasising that the risk assessment submitted for the A46 did not find that there was no risk associated with this amendment, but that there was an acceptable risk. If this risk could even remotely be harm to or the loss of human life, then surely this should be interpreted by the police, who are the experts at managing this risk in real life, and any decision that is made based on this risk assessment should be supported by them. To conclude then, and bearing in mind that Seagrave and Sowerby are small villages with narrow roads and both with primary schools with lots of children in, without a full assessment of the risk posed to the villages of Seagrave and Sowerby due to this amendment, and without the support of Leicestershire Police, we would urge the committee to consider how any decision made tonight would hold up under public scrutiny if the worst was to happen and an accident occur. Madam Chair and committee members, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Sidebottom. I will ask the officer to respond. Mr. Marshall.
Sorry, Chair, would it be possible to respond to all points raised after all of the speakers have spoken?
No problem at all. You're obviously making notes as we go along. We'll move now to Mr. Niall Alcock, the agent. Again, you have 5 minutes, Mr. Alcock, and after 4 minutes, it will be indicated that you just have 1 minute left.
Thank you. I'm going to start the clock and your time starts now.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, my name's Neil Alcock and I'm representing the applicant today. Leicester City FC is now nearing completion of what has already been recognised as probably the best training facility in Europe. It will support the club's continued success in both the Premier League and Europe and bring significant economic and social benefits to Charnwood. Since approval for the training ground was granted just over 2 years ago, the club has been working tirelessly to deliver this fantastic facility on time. The original objective was to be open in time for the 2021 pre-season. As with projects across the UK, this programme has been delayed by the COVID crisis. Works are now almost complete and the club is ready to occupy the training ground and bring it into active use. COVID has likewise interrupted and delayed discussions with Highways England to agree the technical details of the junction improvement works approved in the planning permission, hence the reason for this amendment application. These discussions with Highways England are now resolved and detailed technical designs agreed. Work in the junction improvements are planned to commence on 4th of January and complete on 5th of March 2021. The works contractor has been appointed, the necessary road closures secured, and the programme of works agreed with Highways England. The club has agreed an extensive set of mitigation measures to manage movements to and from the facility in the interim period. They have been developed through months of close consultation with the local authority and Highways England. These are detailed in the officer's report and will be controlled by a tightly worded planning condition. I would like to make some comments on these measures. Closure of the show pitch for spectator matches will remove completely the biggest traffic generating use on site and minimise third parties accessing the site. Traffic movements through the A46 junction will be approximately 50% less than movements have been during the construction period. All users will be directed to a sensible diversion that has been agreed with Highways England. This will prohibit all traffic associated with the training ground from making right-hand turns onto and from the A46. Users will also be instructed not to use Seagrave as an alternative diversion. The vast majority of people accessing the facility will be direct club employees. This gives the club the maximum level of control, more so even than during the construction phase of works. This will be enforced through an existing disciplinary procedure that is already well established and understood with the club's employees, from players to support staff. Traffic routes will also be incorporated into third-party contracts, from deliveries through to maintenance. Implementation of a rigorous monitoring system agreed with Highways England and the local authority that will provide the council with a robust enforcement mechanism, which ultimately could allow for cessation of the use of the facility if the measures are not being adhered to. I would also add that the central reservation of the A46 will be closed throughout the duration of the works, from 4th of January through to 5th of March. Consequently, it will not be possible for drivers to make a right turn either onto or off Parkhill Lane for the duration of the works. Drivers' only option will be to follow the diversion routes that will be put in place. It is therefore only the month of December when the manoeuvre in question is even physically possible. It is reasonable to assume that between the current COVID restrictions and the festive break, traffic levels will be lower than normal on the A46 in this period. I would also comment that the Leicestershire Police comment referenced earlier was, as stated, was received in May and did not reflect the further mitigation measures put in place. The impact of this amendment not being granted is that the club will not be able to use the training facility for almost the entirety of the season. This could have a direct impact on the footballing success of the club, its operational and financial performance, and its ability to deliver the broad range of community initiatives from the training centre as agreed under the planning permission. It is in the club's direct interest to actively enforce the proposed travel plan for the duration of the works.
You have 10 seconds.
As noted in the officer's report, Highways England has raised no objection to the proposed amendment and is satisfied that the mitigation measures proposed will allow for safe usage of the facility until the works are complete.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Alcock. We now move to Mr. Brown, the Chairman of Seagrave Parish Council. Again, you have 5 minutes, Mr. Brown, and we will indicate when your 1 minute is away from finishing. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Brown, I'm going to start the timer now. You now have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the councillors for listening to me today. Firstly, I must say that it's very disappointing that we're even here today. The work on the A46 junction should have been given top priority and have been completed in time for the opening of the new facility. We've always insisted that the junction is unsafe, a view expressed in the huge number of responses to the original application 2 years ago, and that view has not changed. In fact, things have got worse over the past 2 years, and at times we have felt as if the village is under siege. Local knowledge and opinion have been and continue to be ignored. We don't believe that the so-called improvements about to be carried out will lead significantly to improved safety at the junction. Highways England have used modelling studies and statistics and insist that it is safe and can cope with the predicted traffic flows for the next few years. But this conclusion is completely different from that put forward in the early 1990s, when a flyover was deemed necessary for safety reasons. Although we opposed the original application in 2018, we took comfort in the assurance that the safety of the junction would be improved before the site was opened. Therefore, we opposed this amendment application from the outset, and numerous photographs have been posted on the Charnwood Borough Council planning portal to support our opinion. These were obtained by chance when the councillor happened to be at the junction at the same time. And logic obviously tells us that there have been many more unnoticed and unrecorded incidents. These photos show dangerous practices involving all types of vehicle, particularly the larger ones, using the crossing and waiting in the central reservation. Furthermore, there is ambiguity in some of the documents that have been posted on the portal, and this confusion lies in the meaning of the terms junction, turn left, turn west. And as you can see from the maps, the A46 runs north-south at the Park Hill Lane crossing. So our players and staff being told to arrive and depart through Seagrave. Our delivery is being made outside the hours of 7 AM and 10 PM, with drivers being told to avoid using the junction. And does that mean they'll avoid using the A46 as well? If this amendment is to be approved, the following points must be addressed unequivocally, and I urge the Plans Committee to give their full attention during the discussion. 1. Is the traffic to and from the site being instructed to use the A46 and not the village roads? Every vehicle leaving the site must be actively directed to turn right to the A46 and then to turn left onto the northbound carriageway. 3. Deliveries must be made via the A46. 4. Can LCFC be certain that their traffic management plan will be adhered to? 5. Is the 3 months allowed for the work going to be strictly enforced? And finally, if the work is not completed, will the trading site be closed? So in summary then, we do not think the site should be allowed to open until the junction improvements have been made. And if any of the conditions I have mentioned cannot be guaranteed, this application must be rejected. Thank you to you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. And the officer will clarify everything when the last speaker has spoken. Councillor Poland, I don't know whether you've been able to join us or not.
Yes, I have, Councillor Fryer, and thank you very much, members. I've just been having the black screen of death flash up on me a few times, so I thought it'd be sensible to send over just in case.
Okay, so
yeah, right. So I'm going to start the timer now. So your time starts now. Thank you.
Good evening, members. This application was submitted at the end of April and the public consultation ran into May, and that was the time I called this application in. My reasons for doing so were primarily around road safety. The junction at the A46 was by far the biggest concern of Seagrave residents when the Park Hill application was being considered. Anyone who knows the junction will know how dangerous it is, yet at the Plans Committee meeting in 2018, when the training ground application was passed by the club, the club argued that no improvements were needed at that time. This therefore indicated to me that the junction probably wouldn't be a priority for the club, and the fact that no visible work was progressing after a year of development of the ground didn't do anything to dispel that suspicion. It was in this context then that the application was received, asking to allow occupation of the site before the junction work had even started. My concern was therefore that if this application was approved, the site would be occupied, no work would happen, and after a few months, the club would argue that improvements were not necessary and seek to remove the condition. Such a development so close to a dangerous junction onto a major trunk road without any safety improvements whatsoever would clearly be unacceptable. However, since that time, the club have been very proactive in offering reassurance the junction work will be complete. I've spoken to the Director of Infrastructure and Estates at the club, who has not only given me a verbal commitment to the club's absolute intent to complete the work, but has also shared with me documentation showing why the work has been delayed. And in addition, on the 18th of November, I received confirmation from the Walker Construction that improvement works on the A46 junction will begin on the 4th of January. I think the club have therefore proven their good intent to get the works completed, and I am significantly more reassured on this point than I was when I called the application in 6 months ago. There has been concern in the village regarding the interim travel plan. Some of the wording has suggested that traffic may be directed through Seagrave Village. I'm grateful to the case officer for answering numerous questions from myself and residents on this point, but just for absolute clarity tonight, I would be grateful for confirmation that no additional traffic whatsoever will be directed towards Seagrave Village as a result of this plan, either in terms of club staff, including players, or in terms of deliveries to and from the training ground. There is also concern that the traffic from the site may go through Seagrave and Sarby when intending to head south on the E46 to avoid the mitigation. I would also like it making absolutely clear tonight in the travel plan, and very absolutely clear within the travel plan as well, that all traffic intending to use the A46 at any point is to follow the travel plan and not go through Seagrave to join it at another point. The application seeks to vary condition 6 of the original planning permission to include the line. The proposed improvement scheme at the A46/Park Hill junction will be implemented and open to traffic within 3 months of the first occupation of the development. This, along with assurances and evidence I've received from the club, do reassure me that the work will indeed take place shortly. Subject then to categorical assurances that all traffic generated by the site, either arriving or exiting, will be directed away from the village of Seagrave, I would no longer have an objection to the condition being amended as proposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Poland. I'll now return to Mr. Lewis Marshall, the officer, to answer the points that were and comment on the points that have been raised by the previous speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There's quite a bit to pick up on there. So I'll try and go through them in order as best I can. So it was stated that the junction improvements themselves are inadequate. However, the improvements are approved and are deemed to be adequate by Highways England. Notwithstanding that, the adequacy of the improvement scheme is not up for debate as part of this application. Members are being asked to consider if use of the facility can commence with a 3-month delay in delivery of the approved junction scheme, and are not being asked to amend the junction improvement scheme itself. It was asked whether players and the staff are being told to arrive and depart through Seagrave. No, this is not the case. Staff and players that would ordinarily access or leave the facility via the A46 are being asked not to use the central reservation and instead to follow the diversion route set out in the presentation. It was asked whether deliveries were made outside the hours of 7 AM and 10 PM. with drivers being told to avoid using the junction. I think I covered this point in the presentation. The interim travel measures document sets out that deliveries will be taken during off-peak hours, and it written into the contract that the applicant holds with their suppliers that the site will be accessed via the A46 and not through Seagrave. It was requested that all traffic to and from the site should be instructed to use the A46 and not the village roads. This is not the case as set out in the report. It was accepted. I think I covered this in the presentation as well. It was accepted as part of the original application that 40% of all trips generated by the facility would arrive and depart from the west through Seagrave. But no additional trips will arise as a result of this application. But because of this, it would not be reasonable or necessary to impose such measures on the applicant's employees. The mitigating measures as part of the application are there to prevent use of the central reservation by users that would ordinarily access or leave the facility via the A46. It was asked whether enforcement action would be taken if the works were not carried out within the 3-month period. So the 3-month period is reasonable and achievable, which is why it has been recommended for approval by Highways England. If in the unlikely event that there is an unforeseen delay to the delivery of the junction improvement works, then the applicant would need to make an application to vary the condition again to seek a further delay. And we as a local planning authority and Highways England would need to consider any application at that time and on its merits. It was also raised that further consultation should be undertaken with the Leicestershire Police. Now, yes, Leicestershire Police did raise concerns, and those concerns must be noted by members, but those concerns were raised prior to the submission of a significant amount of additional information that was requested by Highways England. Obviously, Leicestershire Police are not the statutory consultee for road safety. Highways England are. So I would say it's not necessary to carry out further consultation with the Leicestershire Police. Now, in terms of, I think it was Dr. Sidebottom requested a risk assessment to understand the risks in terms of additional vehicle movements through Seagrave and Sileby. Again, I think I've covered this in the response already and through the presentation. But in terms looking specifically in terms of the risks that employees would travel through Seagrave and Sileby as opposed to travelling north along the A46 to the next junction to come back down the A46. I think whilst travelling through Seagrave and Sileby is shorter in distance, it's not quicker in time. And I think over the short term to medium term future, that there are significant traffic delays through Sileby at Seagrave Road. There are traffic lights due to development taking place there, and also at Ratcliffe Road. So I think all things considered, that the likelihood of additional vehicles travelling through Seagrave and Sileby is very, very slim, because it's simply a less desirable route than taking the diversion north along the A46. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have two speakers at the moment, but I would just like, before I go to them, just a point I'd like to clarify, and I know Mr. Marshall was taking note. The agent stated that the central reservation will be closed during these alterations, so therefore it will be impossible to turn right unless you're breaking the law completely. If he could just refresh me on that. And also, because he also stated that because the main construction work had been undertaken now, and this is outside the line, the actual heavy goods side of it will be reduced anyway, because you haven't got the builders or the construction people going in there. But if you could just, and then I shall go to Councillor Tassell first, followed by Councillor Grimley. It was just we hadn't heard that the central reservation was likely to be closed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fryer. Yeah, so in terms of the closure of the central reservation during the construction works between January and March, it is set out in the report that it is expected that that will be the case. However, that hasn't yet been confirmed by Highways England. So I wouldn't want to say that is definitely the case. It is expected, but I can't say that is definitely the case. And the other query was, just remind me what the other query was. Sorry, Chair.
He also stated that because of the change in the traffic, the major construction, heavy stuff, has altered. There should be a reduction in heavy goods, heavy vehicles, through which he mentioned as well. That was all. And then I'll go through. I've now got 3 councillors.
Yes, so yeah, I mean that is absolutely correct. Obviously, the construction phase is drawing to a close. The facility is ready to be brought into use. So yes, I think as Mr. Alcock set out, the number of vehicular movements generated by the construction phase itself is much more significant than would be when the facility is brought into use. But obviously, it's worth pointing out as well that over the interim 3-month period, the level of trips generated by the use will be less than what it would be working at full capacity, because obviously the applicant has agreed to not use the show pitch and obviously the 499 seat spectator stand as a result of that.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Tassell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was on the original planning committee for this application, and I voted for it. So I voted for it with a condition about that A46 road. There was a lot of concern showed at that meeting about the road. I personally saw a very, very nasty accident there one year. 2018. They've had 2 years to do this. Can I know why it wasn't done right from the word go? Was it the developer or was it the Highways England that didn't give them permission? They've had 2 years to do this. It's going to take them from January to April now. Surely they could have done it within the 2 years if they had put it forward in the first place as the condition asked.
Mr. Marshall, do you want the other 2 councillors to speak first before you come back on the points that have been raised?
No, I can come back on that point, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think the agent, speaking on behalf of the applicant, did set out the reasons why there has been a delay in the approval or the technical approval of the junction improvement works. Notwithstanding that, the planning system can't be used punitively. Members need to consider the application before them, and the reason for the delay cannot be used as a reason to or reason for or against granting planning permission. Members are being asked to consider the application in terms of varying the condition as it's been applied for with the interim travel measures in place.
Thank you. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. I think obviously the original conditions put in place was to restrict the full use of the site, which I think that's not going to happen until the road junction improvements are put in place. And obviously they're not going to have the show pitch or the associated stands in use, which is a big sort of chunk of what would be the traffic. So that's good news. Also, listening tonight and listening to Councillor Poland as well, there has been a lot of work put in by the club to assure people, including the councillor, that measures will be put in place and will be strictly adhered to. So I mean, I know it is a busy road in any case. I think personally, I would support the officer's recommendation to approve. So we'll propose officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grimley. I have two more speakers. Before I go to that, is anyone willing to second Councillor Grimley's proposal? No word at the moment.
I'm happy to second that proposal.
Thank you.
Chair.
Councillor Ranson.
Thank you, Chair. You actually is like the ward councillor. I'm quite pleased now because I was on the original panel and I didn't approve of any of the because of that junction, and I'm quite pleased the layout, and I'm hopeful that the conditions that this work will start now on the 4th of January and hopefully be finished by March, which is a quite good condition. And I agree with Councillor Poland that he's obviously done a lot of work, and Leicester Football Club have actually worked with the local residents by what Councillor Poland has said. So I think if everybody, I will think to see what I will do, but I think the outlay now is a lot better. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, whilst I agree with Councillor Ranson, I think this is just a temporary measure, this outlay, for 3 months. I was on the original planning committee for this application. I refused it, and I didn't want it because I just think there's an accident there waiting to happen. I'm very surprised it took so long for this to happen, but I would have seconded this or proposed it at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have no more speakers indicating at the moment. Did you want to come back, Mr. Marshall?
Nothing to add from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We will now go to the vote, and I shall call out each member's name in alphabetical order. And if you could indicate, just say your name and also that whether it's for, against or abstain.
Chair, before we go to the vote, sorry to interrupt, can we just go back to the proposer and just confirm that it includes the amendments set out in the extras report?
Yes, of course. Councillor Grimley?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can confirm that includes the proposal set out in the extras report as well.
Thank you very much. So we've had the proposer, Councillor Grimley, seconded by Councillor Bentley. So we now move to the vote. Councillor Bentley.
For, Chair.
Councillor Camsell.
Abstain, Chair.
Sorry?
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Capleton.
For the motion, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Charles.
For the motion, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Forrest.
I'm against, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Grimley.
For, Chair.
Councillor Lowe.
For, Chair.
Councillor Ranson.
For, Chair.
Councillor Savage.
For, Chair.
Councillor Tassell.
For.
Councillor Tillotson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm for.
And Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Abstain.
Thank you. And I myself are for. So I make that 2 abstentions, 1 against, 1, 2, and 10 for. If I could ask the legal officer, Catherine Harrison, to confirm, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I agree. The proposition was carried with a vote of 10 for, 1 against and 2 abstentions. So that was a vote to grant permission with the conditions as amended in the extras report.
Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to the last item, which is of the agenda, which is the list of applications determined under delegated powers. This is pages 95 to 113. This is basically normally for information only. But if you do have a question, please raise your hand under the normal way. I have no hands showing at the moment, so thank you very much. So there we are, 6:05, ladies and gentlemen. Very well done, and I would like to thank you all for your attention, and also to wish you all a very good Christmas, and we all look forward to 2021. The next meeting will be on the 28th of January 2021, and but thank you very much also to the officers and for all the speakers. So take care and have a good rest of your evening. Thank you very much.